Alright, to start off, I will be giving background information on President Trump. Back in 2024, now President Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris both ran in the election, each with their own campaign full of promises they plan to set in motion when in office. Donald Trump's campaign focused on immigration, prices of important goods, the types of energy we use, and government policy. Kamala Harris's campaign mostly focused on lowering the cost of living, healthcare, gun violence, and other democratic issues. Even though I talked about both campaigns, I will be mostly focused on Donald Trump's campaign and his promises. From the start, Trump promised to lock down the borders and kick millions of immigrants out of the US regardless of their legal status. This was a core campaign pledge that turned into the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. He moved aggressively from day one in 2025, launching nationwide ICE raids in cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. Despite the success of this promise, his efforts blew up in his face as ICE swept up non-criminals and innocent U.S. citizens. Then a series of high-profile incidents such as lethal shootings during operations in Minneapolis, protests, and in some cases riots. The promise that he had made ate itself alive and inevitably just made no changes other than invoking fear for a few months. Another promise that Trump made was to lower the pricing on imported goods. Trump promised that steep tariffs on imports from China, Mexico, and Canada and much of the world would bring back manufacturing jobs and shrink the trade deficit and make America wealthy again by forcing other countries to pay up. He did this by raising the average U.S. tariff rate to the highest it's been in decades and generating billions in new revenue. This was declared as a success as the trade deficit narrowed later in the year, but it once again flipped from him as American businesses and consumers ended up paying most of the costs through higher pricing on clothing, electronics, cars, furniture, and other goods, adding half a percentage point to inflation and costing households an extra $1,000 to $2,000 per year. Retaliation from other countries hurt U.S. exporters, manufacturing gains were limited, and supply chains faced disruptions. The big promise of cheaper prices and manufacturing boom proved much harder to deliver without a broader economic plan. Even though President Trump did a pretty sucky job at fulfilling his campaign's promises, he did in fact score some victories throughout his presidency. Very different from the first two, these two campaign promises he actually fulfilled successfully. When it came time to talk about usable energy in the US, Trump could only say drill baby drill, as the campaign promised to rapidly expand domestic oil and natural oil drilling on federal lands, waters, and the outer continental shelf to achieve energy independence than global dominance. Trump often highlighted that the US has more liquid gold, all while he criticized renewable energies, particularly wind, and called it unreliable. The campaign vowed to end and limit new developments in these areas and roll back any mandates favoring them. He believed Americans should use their abundant domestic fossil fuel resources as a foundation of energy, with nuclear as a renewable complement. And with that also, the campaign positioned government policy as the main problem under Biden. Excessive regulations, permitting delays, climate-focused rules that raise costs and threaten grid reliability. He promised to slash the red tape to expedite environmental approvals and permitting for drilling, pipelines, and power plants, declaring a national energy emergency on day one to fast-track projects. He said he was going to end Biden's era pause on LNG exports and withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement to weaken energy subsidies and tax credits. Unfortunately, within these, he did sought victory. During the 2024 election, U.S. President Trump launched a campaign of promises that he failed to complete and stayed true to in his present-day term, like his failed attempt to get every immigrant out of the U.S. or to make prices at an all-time low. Though they were his major promises, they later down the road were unsuccessful. But even with these major losses, he did in fact declare a national emergency at the border, surged enforcement, and launched large-scale ICE operations. His little success led to illegal border crossings dropping to the lowest levels in decades, down over 90% from the year prior. The U.S. achieved negative net migration for the first time in over 50 years, and the administration carried out over 600,000 deportations, plus nearly 2 million self-deportations in the first year. Other completed promises include extending or expanding the 2017 tax cuts through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, including no tax on tips and relief for seniors, issuing pardons for January 6 defendants on day one, and unleashing American energy production, which hit a new record high for oil and natural gas. Trump failed promises that his campaign made, but also succeeded in several of them as well.